Nikhil, Jain, and I'll be serving as the moderator for this conference. As you can see from your pamphlets, we have 8 speeches and 2 panels today, which will cover all different aspects of the medical entrepreneurship ecosystem, from biotechnology to medical devices to healthcare finance. As you all know, Duke has world-class medical resources, and Duke is also making major strides to build a culture of innovation and entrepreneurship. Many people don't realize that to find world-class medical entrepreneurs, you only need to step into Hudson Hall, Fuqua, or the Duke Medicine Pavilion. There are so many medical entrepreneurs around us. They're teaching our classes, they're conducting cutting-edge research, they're mentoring students, and that's just at the university. Look outwards at the broader research triangle, and you will see large and small pharmaceutical companies, device startups, healthcare finance and venture capital firms, and more. Between the opportunities provided by our university and the research triangle, I can confidently say that Duke is one of the best places for aspiring medical innovators and entrepreneurs to attend for their undergraduate and graduate studies. When most think of entrepreneurship, our minds wander to Silicon Valley technology startups like Uber or Airbnb, but not all forms of entrepreneurship are the same, especially in a sector so specialized and research-heavy as the medical sector. Today, you'll learn about these differences as you listen to professional paths of leading medical professionals and entrepreneurs. Something I find so fundamentally beautiful about entrepreneurship in the medical sector is that the work you do directly goes into prolonging or improving the quality of someone's life. A new molecule made by a small biotechnology startup can suddenly become an industry standard that saves countless lives. For the morning, you will hear about the entrepreneurial startup stories of experts with backgrounds in engineering and biotechnology. The panel will include experts who have worked in devices and pharmaceuticals. The afternoon will feature experts who have worked on the financial, consulting, and business side of medical company growth. There are a few people I'd like to thank, as without them, this conference would not have been possible. First, my advisors, Dr. Ken Gall and Dr. Don McDonald, who provided me the mentoring and insight to help start this project, and Dr. Rochelle Schwartz-Bloom, who worked heavily with me throughout the process and made sure the conference planning always stayed on track. I'd also like to thank the marketing operations managers, Luke Farrell and Ed Parentsby, who played a major role in getting this conference set up. In addition to our field team members, Graham Evans, Mirko Tancredi, Jason Ng, Randy Johnson, and Samantha Mentek, who are working right now to ensure today's conference runs smoothly. Last, I'd like to thank my parents for helping me flesh out the idea of starting this conference and encouraging me to take the initiative to make this happen. Without further ado, let's get started. Our first speaker today will be Dr. Joseph Knight. Dr. Knight is the president of the vascular device company Innovast Medical. He recently co-founded Vitalis Ventures, which provides education and consulting experience in innovation strategy and execution of medical devices. He has led the intellectual property development, business, and strategic planning for 4 different ventures. Today, Dr. Knight will introduce you to the life and trials of a serial entrepreneur and give his story from how he started out in studying engineering to founding his multiple ventures. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Knight.
Well, thanks so much, Nikhil. When we first had a conversation about Nikhil wanted to put something like this together, he said, I asked him, so when would you want to do this? And he said, April. And I thought, oh, okay, yeah, I mean, April 2017, sure, we can do that. And we're all here, so let's give Nikhil a round of applause. It's great to be here and great to have the opportunity to talk with you all this morning. My talk may be a little bit different than some of the other folks that you'll see today. What we really talked about me doing was kind of going through the process from being an undergrad in engineering, and then what was the thought process that I went through, the different options that I looked at, as many of you may also be considering different career paths, and talk about some of the different options I had, and in the end, what path I took, and what maybe I enjoyed or felt like I benefited from, and maybe things that weren't so great from the different paths that I took. So you're going to get to know a lot about me, but before that, I'd like to get to know a little bit more about you. How many master's students do we have? So there's a couple. Undergrads? Okay. A little bit larger portion. What about, are there any PhD students? Okay, great. That's fantastic. And then other professionals? Perfect. Okay, so it's a good mix. I've got a little bit of experience in a lot of these different areas. So I'm happy to share those experiences in the hopes that it'll help you as you're trying to make decisions of your path. So we'll spend a lot of time on this slide. I actually realized that last month, 20 years ago, last month, was when I first joined the military. And so I joined the Army National Guard at 17. And for me, it was, I was the first person, I'm the first person in my family to go to college. Do we have any first-time college folks? Few? Yeah, great. Congratulations to all of you. I mean, it's a whole different, not to take anything away from everyone else in the audience, but it's a whole nother level of complexity when you're leading the charge and trying to figure out this path. And so there I was, a 17-year-old guy. I knew that college was important. I knew that I needed to go, but I didn't know, what the day looks like, or do you go from 9 to 5, or what is this college thing? The one thing that I knew for sure was that it's expensive, and that I needed to figure out how to pay for it. And so I went to the military recruiter and said, look, don't sell me anything. I don't want to hear your pitch. Just give me all the written documentation you have of what the Army can do for me to help me pay for school. So I went home that night, read everything, went to my mom, and said, Mom, I'm going to enlist in the Army. And so I went back the next day, enlisted, and the recruiter was like the easiest recruitment ever. Because if you've gone through this before, you know that they're hounding you and calling and everything else. So I made this a very simple process. So then, we have my test scores and everything. The recruiter's like, your test scores are great. You can do anything you want. Here's this massive book of things that you could potentially do. And I said, no, I don't know. I don't know what any of this stuff is. And so I was like, is there a difference? She says, well, there's a, if you join the infantry, you get a $2,500 signing bonus. So I'm thinking, as a 17-year-old, that'll pay for months of food at college. So that's my story of how I ended up in the infantry. Because I was sort of, what do? Well, they run around the woods with guns. I'm like, well, I'm going to have to do that. That's easy enough. But little did I realize, obviously, it's a lot more complicated and crazy. And I ended up spending 8 years from 17 to 25. So a lot of the skills that I learned, I'm an expert on 24 different types of weapon systems that is zero use to me today. But the discipline and the leadership and team aspects were huge. And so I started out with this just to kind of say, throughout my college time frame, and I think it's a good recommendation that I would encourage all of you to do, is get involved in something that you can be passionate about, that gives you leadership experience, that gives you the opportunity to work in a team, and that gives you the opportunity to excel. So does anyone know what this here is? Unless you have been in the military, you probably won't. So this is the EIB, the Expert Infantryman's Badge. So at 19, I had the opportunity to go, and you basically have 2 weeks of testing from early in the morning to late in the evening. It's one of the most highly prized peacetime decorations that you can get. And so I was able to, at 19, achieve the EIB, which was just a fantastic experience. So the moral here is get involved in things, teamwork, leadership, and opportunity to excel. So I went to the local university. I was very excited about being in the local university. All through high school, I really enjoyed physics and biology. I didn't really know, I didn't want to be a physicist, I didn't want to be a biologist, but I knew that I loved physics and biology. When I got into college, I realized, biomedical engineering is really cool, and that kind of combines physics and biology. And so I went through and did a bachelor's in engineering science and a master's in biomedical engineering, and had the opportunity to do some research while I was an undergrad. When I got to that, when I was completing my master's, I was looking at a couple of different things, maybe go to medical school, maybe continue on to a PhD, and an opportunity came up for the biodesign innovation program out at Stanford, which is just a phenomenal opportunity. And so I created my first patent when I was doing my master's, and realized that I needed a physician to help me work through all the details. And so I found a retired cardiothoracic surgeon who was now a professor at the business school. I met with him, and he helped me tremendously with the patent. And I still remember the first time I met with him, he said, "So what do you want to do with your life?" And I'm a young, ambitious 23-year-old guy, and I said, "I want to combine engineering, medicine, and business and solve the most pressing needs in healthcare." And he says, "Oh, you want to do this?" And he slides this presentation over to me that was from a presentation that he saw about bioscience. And I flip through it and I say, "Yes, that's exactly what I want to do." And so he says, "Well, you should apply." And again, at this point, I'm 23. I'm still leading the charge for my family as the first person to be in college. I'm thinking, I'm not going to waste Stanford's time to apply to this program. So for the next 3 months, I proceeded to blow off this cardiac surgeon whenever he would say, "So how's your application going? Have you applied yet? Oh yeah, I haven't got to it yet." Making all kinds of terrible excuses. So eventually, he sends an email to the contact that he has and said, "We have the perfect person for your program. How do you go about applying?" I said, "Well, now I'm going to waste people's time." The long and short of it is I feel very honored to have had the opportunity, and Dr. Ladd as well, who's also a biodesign fellow. It's just a phenomenal program where you take together engineers, physicians, and business folks, and you're given the task of finding and solving the most pressing needs of medicine. And so that was just an absolutely life-changing experience. During that time frame, our team came up with a couple different patents that became the core concepts behind a company called Hydrogen Technology, which has served several 100,000 patients. It's a very simple cardiac monitoring device. So I thoroughly loved the entire time in biodesign. But I was there, when I was there, I ended up seeing an opportunity for some research that was very similar to research that I had done in my master's, but for a PhD program. And it was for a PhD program over in Zurich. I've been to Europe once, but the opportunity when I did research on the university, Albert Einstein originally he applied for the ETH. His test scores weren't good enough, so he went and did the theories of relativity. Then they let him in. So I thought, this is probably a pretty good university. It's considered the MIT of Europe. So at this point, I got the lesson from the interaction with the cardiac surgeon to say, hey, have some confidence. And that's one of the lessons I want to share with you is believe in yourself, and probably even more importantly, find mentors that believe in you, because they'll be able to give you a realistic sense of when you should go for something and when it probably doesn't make sense to do so. So at this point, I'm like, I can do anything. So I went here, but I started doing the PhD and thoroughly enjoyed the research and everything. But about a year and a half in, I realized, wow, I am becoming a world expert in this very small sliver of science and engineering. But the only thing that I really know as I look at my path ahead is this is definitely not what I want to do for the rest of my life. I enjoyed the research and everything, but when I thought about having to fight for grants and publish or perish and always writing publications, and it really wasn't the path that I wanted to follow. So I ended up saying, well, what is it that I really love to do? And the things that I've done previously that I really enjoyed were the biodesign process, going through and not just being one of the things that frustrated me in biodesign was I was the mechanical engineer. We also had an electrical engineer, a physician, and a business guy. And I would, when we were building our device, it was, okay, Joe, so we're going to build it. We want to do it this way, this way. Can you do it? And I would say, well, there's these nuances here. We've got to be careful. No, Joe, you don't understand. I don't care about all the nuances and stuff. Can you build it? Can you build it? And I was like, yeah, we can do it. Okay, good. Check it. And then they would leave. And I was like, wait a minute, no, I want to be part of the strategy development of not just being the engineer, but being able to talk about the business aspects and how we execute on the strategy. So I'm thinking through all these things while I'm going through the PhD, and I realized I started applying for consulting gigs. I started for McKinsey and some of the other big consulting firms, applying to some small companies. never really considered large companies at this point. But in the end, decided to go back. I really felt like I need an entirely new pivot in my career. I don't want to be just the engineer anymore. I want to be capable and able for people to see me as able to do the business aspects, to be able to execute the business strategy. And so, a year and a half into the PhD, I went to my team leader and said, I need to complete my PhD in 3 years. I'm going to go to business school, and I'm going to change my career path. And he's like, sounds like an interesting plan. It's impossible. Nobody finishes in 3 years. You can't do that. 4 years. Work really hard. 4 years you can do it. I said, no, I've got to do it in 3 years. I can't wait another year. I need to get into business school as soon as possible. So, in the end, I started on the 4th of July in 2006 and finished July 3rd of 2009. So it was exactly, now it was a little bit crazy to do because I finished on a Friday, I fitted my PhD on Friday, and then the next Wednesday I was here to do the MBA. But I looked at a lot of different pathways, and in the end chose to go to business school. And during business school, when I came into business school, I thought, well, you know what, there's all this crazy, I hear all my colleagues, all the other students talking about there's recruiting, and business school is like from day one, you're doing recruiting. I mean, it's crazy from that perspective. But I was very focused. I knew that I was a startup guy, and I had 2 companies that I was bringing into business school, because at Duke we have a program called P3, the Program for Entrepreneurs, where up to 25% of your credits for the MBA can come from starting and running a medical device company or any kind of early stage startup company. So I brought in Medici Medical Technologies, which is a med tech company for stress urinary incontinence. Actually, the technology came from my time during at Biodesign. And then also, the Innovation Education International is taking the sort of a base innovation process and teaching it to developing countries. And so I've had the opportunity, while I was in the PhD, to teach this process of innovation to a couple different countries throughout Africa. So the time in business school, I really wanted to gain, part of it was the brand of the stamp of an MBA, so that I would no longer be considered just the engineer. Because that, I mean, you can see that it's something that was so frustrating to me, because I wanted to be part of the bigger aspect of medical device innovation, not just the engineering, but the medical side and the business aspects. So, was able to get that, branding, and all you have to do is, it's relatively simple. You just continue to do your work, and you get the degree. There's actually, grading at business school is really strange. There's like 3 or 4 different grades. There's super pass or superior pass, which is like 10% of the people get. There's pass, which is like 60, 70%. There's like low pass, which doesn't really mean anything. And then there's like fail, which like 5% of people get. So we have this saying that P equals MBA. So if you're passing, you get a pass, then you're going to get your MBA. But there's other aspects of business school you obviously should not be just coasting through the program. Some of the other things that I wanted to get experience in were the basic skill sets that somebody with an MBA has. So you don't become an expert in business by going to business school, but you do get a basic knowledge of marketing and operations and all of the finance and all these different aspects that are critical when you're wanting to start or be part of running a medical device company. Just a quick aside, when I came in to business school, I was thinking through, I took my first marketing class, and I'm thinking, as an engineer, marketing, isn't that like selling cereal to small children? It just seems like a really silly thing. But what I would realize is that marketing is actually a lot of the work that I did in Biodesign, understanding the customer and the specific needs of the customer is a form of marketing. So I realized through that process that I really actually enjoy marketing and helping to be the voice of the customer, help to understand what the needs are for the physician, for the patient, and make sure that the devices have those different pieces in the technology. So, again, business school is a crazy place. You're recruiting all the time. But I was so focused on, like, I'm either going to do startup or I'm going to do venture capital or something along those lines. But you start getting emails and phone calls from different recruiters, and so I'm getting phone calls from like investment banking and, hey, would you come to this recruiting event? I'm like, I have no idea what investment banking is. Like, but sure, I'll come to your event. And so I would end up going through the process of investment banking and consulting and all these other different areas. And what was fascinating is that you learn by going through the recruiting process, you learn so much about what that lifestyle is like. So the lifestyle of an investment banker, the lifestyle of a consultant, and in the end, I was sort of deciding between investment banking, consulting, the small company that I had started, as well as some other smaller, mid-sized companies that were here local in the Triangle. What I ended up doing was joining Medtronic. And the reason that I joined Medtronic is that there's these, and you guys have probably heard about these things, the leadership development rotation programs. So programs where you go and over a relatively short period of time, you get to do a lot of different functions, so marketing, business development, strategy, over a short period of time and in different business units and in this case, in different geographies. And so when I looked at that and said, I really need to get some, I have all of this academic experience. The joke in my family is that, I was the first person to go to college, but then I made up for everyone else not going. So I have this background, but I really, in order to do the things that I want to be able to do, to combine in this engineering, medicine, and business, I need to be able to have more corporate or industry experience. And so I ended up joining Medtronic and initially started out in this leadership development rotation program. Was able to do upstream marketing, downstream marketing, business development, strategy, corporate innovation over a 5-year time frame. And so that experience has just been critical in bringing together a lot of the other previous work that I've done. So then I get to a point where we're finalizing a lot of the work I did at Medtronic in the end as the director of strategic marketing was looking out at potential acquisitions. So small startups or bigger companies that Medtronic might want to acquire, to bring. So Medtronic does a lot of internal development, but that's usually more incremental innovation. Small improvements on the current technology that's there. To get the really disruptive, big changing type of technologies, you usually have to acquire those. And so we had just finished an acquisition that I was part of from start to finish over a 3-year time frame. It's a long, slow dance for these types of acquisitions. So it was a good time frame for me to kind of think, hey, maybe it's time for me to move on. I really enjoyed my time at Medtronic, but my passion has always been more on the entrepreneurial side. And so my wife and I decided that we were going to take a leap, and we actually both quit our corporate job. She was working for, so I'll take a quick step back. My wife and I met at business school and then moved up. I went to Medtronic and she worked at McKinsey & Company for the past 4 years. We both quit our jobs and started a company, Vitalize Ventures, which is really focused on doing consulting for innovation, strategy, and execution, which are vital to any venture to be successful. We then decided that we were going to move back to the Triangle, so we recently moved back and bought our first house. And then I had the opportunity to connect with a couple of Duke surgeons that got tired of seeing all of these terrible complications coming back for hemodialysis patients. So they created a technology that allows the grafts to be more effective. So what's fantastic for me for this, and again, I've only been a couple of months in this new role, but I get to pull together all of the different experiences that I've had previously and put it into, again, doing the engineering, medicine, and business. And so this has been a fantastic opportunity to, again, continue to collect those experiences that will allow me to do something like this, which is been very exciting. So I've only got a couple more minutes, but I want to run you through quickly some different thoughts that I've used throughout my career that have been extremely helpful. So this is from a book, How We Measure Your Life by Clay Christensen. And he talks about this idea of having a deliberate strategy of, I want to do X in 10, 20, whatever years. So for me, it was always this combination. I didn't have a good sense of what it was. You know, it's physics, biology, it's engineering, medicine, business. But having that deliberate strategy really helps you to focus in on where you're going. You then will, of course, have different emergent opportunities that pop up, and you can decide whether you take advantage of those or not. One good way of doing that is asking yourself, what would have to be true for this to make sense, for this to work? Doing a thought experiment, and then trying to find data to prove or disprove this hypothesis that you formed. So I would highly recommend this book, How We Measure Your Life. And this idea, this concept of a deliberate strategy and being able to take advantage of emerging opportunities. And I'll move through that very quickly here. So here's another good book, Seeing Yourself as Others Do. And it talks, part of it, it talks about different expectations that people have of you in your 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s. So very quickly, in your 20s, you're really trying to complete tasks, show that you're able to demonstrate success, and you're building your career in different experiences that you can then leverage down the road. The 30s are more moving into supporting others and more team aspects. Life balance issues start to become a potential concern as you get a spouse and family. And then the 40s is more, it's setting the stage for the rest of your career, and then you can start to get back in the 50s. So this is I've got this slide and another one which is very similar to this, and then we'll finish up. This was something that I learned. One of the great things about a large company is that you just have so much resources and so much time to be able to develop your people. Where in a startup, you know, I've heard it explained, in a startup the ship is sinking, and we all have to paddle like crazy to try to get to where we're going. In a large company, you've got a big, massive Titanic, so you've got more time to be able to develop people. And so particularly as someone who's young and coming out of school, a large company can be a great opportunity to get some very good experience. I met someone from HR, human resources person, who introduced me to this concept. And it takes into consideration some of the last two slides. What he basically said, okay, Joe, I want you to tell me a specific time, you're going to be age X, and what role or position. So I said, well, I don't know, and I am involved. And he's like, no, I want an exact answer. So I said, okay, by 45, I want to be running or a significant contributor to an incubator, medical device incubator. He's like, okay, that's great. So now we can start to talk through what experiences or skill sets do you need. Not only that, so who will allow you to do that, but also so that you feel comfortable in being able to execute and make that happen. Then you can talk through, okay, let's say, in the end, I went through and did this sort of exercise and said, okay, I was around 33 at that time, so in say 12 to 15 years, which seems like a tremendous amount of time, but when you think about, well, if each role I'm in is 3 or 4 years, that's really only 3 or 4 or 5 different roles that I've got in order to collect all those experiences that I need. So I kind of did the inventory of what types of skill sets and experiences do I need, which is initially I had a blank stare. I had no idea what the skill sets are, but I could have conversations with people and say, mentors of mine, and say, hey, look, I'm thinking that I want to do this in the long term. Here are some of the skill sets and experiences that I know I'll need. What other skill sets, you've done something similar to this, what other skill sets and experiences would you think would be important? And then I could look at the different skill sets and experiences that I have today and map out what's the gap between these and try to focus on what these roles will be. It's a little bit more intentional. Now, granted, we started off with the deliberate strategy versus the emergent opportunities. Inevitably, different emergent opportunities will come up, and you won't be able to perfectly plan this out. But by going through this process, it can have a tremendous impact on your ability to navigate through different emergent opportunities. might come up. So that's all I've got for now. We'll have a panel discussion. I'm happy to go into more detail on this